when will the Hyperloop finally arrive? Imagine, just 30 minutes from Los Angeles to San Francisco. No turbulence, no traffic jams, no weather delays. A capsule shooting through an almost airless tube, floating on air cushions or magnetic fields, propelled by invisible linear motors. Sounds like science fiction? This very fantasy electrified the world when Elon Musk published his Hyperloop Alpha white paper in 2013. An idea so bold that it sparked both hope and healthy skepticism. Chan, we defeat air? Chan, we defeat friction? Chan, we reinvent travel? Musk didn't present his work as a product catalog, but as a thought experiment, deliberately open source. He promised no factory, no groundbreaking. Instead, he put a blueprint in the middle of the room and said, "Build it if you have the courage." That was the real surprise. Why? Because behind that openness was a subtle statement. His aim was to challenge a complacent world of infrastructure, a world that, in California, was planning a high-speed rail line. Slow, expensive, politically bogged down. His Hyperloop was cognitive dissonance on paper, faster and cheaper, futuristic, and supposedly more realistic than skeptics wanted to admit. Then came the great temptation. Universities, startups, tinkerers, they all saw the tube as a new El Dorado for engineering. Between 2015 and 2019, SpaceX hosted the Hyperloop pod competition. A short, straight test track in Hawthorne became the playground of ambition. It smelled of ozone, heat, and ideals. Student teams coded levitation controls, tinkered with brakes, tested linear motors, celebrated interim records that fired the imagination. Yet behind every cheer stood an unspoken truth. A clean straightaway of a few hundred meters in a controlled environment is not the planet on which real infrastructure lives. Because outside lies the realm of complexity. A real route is not just a tube, it's a cosmos of systems. Power supply, vacuum generation and maintenance, emergency logic, evacuation, maintenance, switches, curve radii, expansion joints, seismic considerations. From an elegant diagram, it becomes a safety case. From a prototype, it becomes a world of standards. From an idea, it becomes capital locked in for decades. The question shifted. Not whether you can make a pod levitate, that was shown, but whether you can move tens of thousands of people daily, safely, repeatably, and acceptably through kilometers of tubes. And that's another league. The major hurdles sound dry but are dramatic. A pressure drop in a near vacuum tube is not a small leak, but a wave that decides in milliseconds over lives and materials. Emergency exits every few dozen meters mean airlocks, redundant seals, fire protection, communications, all in an environment that, by definition, doesn't want air. Every kilowatt hour for pumps and compressors is no footnote, but an operating cost reality. Every additional decibel of noise or vibration becomes a licensing issue. Every kilometer costs, not in a lab, but in concrete, steel, seals, land, and political patience. Suddenly, it's not the motors that intimidate, but the bureaucracy. Musk's role remained ambivalent and therefore intriguing. As a motivator, he delivered vision, stage, competitions, a talent pipeline. As an entrepreneur actually building Hyperloop, number. The Boring Company drills cheaper tunnels, yes, but for systems at normal pressure. The Las Vegas Loop is an underground people mover with cars, not the Hyperloop. The difference is fundamental. Here, tires and air, their levitation and vacuum. And when the SpaceX test track was dismantled, the date doesn't matter, the symbolism does. It felt like the host had closed the playground and told the kids, if you want to build, find your own field. So why didn't the big leap come? Because Hyperloop is not just tech, it's system integration. You need a conductor setting standards, defining interfaces, wrestling approval paths with regulators, writing safety philosophies into codes, orchestrating supply chains, securing decades of financing, and bearing the risk in the end. The open principle, freedom for many designs, generates creativity at the start, but fragmentation at the end. Air cushion or maglev, partial vacuum or near zero, emergency exits through crosslocks or capsule self-rescue, every fork costs years. Without a unified target, brilliant minds get stuck in debate. Add the psychology of the public. A train that stops is routine. A plane that turns back is annoying. A capsule stuck in a vacuum triggers primal fears. Infrastructure is not only physical, it's cultural. People must believe they are safe. Politicians must believe they'll be re-elected. Investors must believe returns will come. Hyperloop demands faith on credit, more than conservative systems like rail or aviation ever do. And faith on credit is rare currency in democracies. Is the technology entirely innocent? Number. Levitation, low friction, propulsion. Those puzzles are solved in part, but the whole puzzle lies in the interfaces. Switches in evacuated systems aren't just a curve. They're moving seals that must endure over lifetimes. Evacuation in a tube isn't just open a door. It's pressure management, protection, orientation, medical access, all within minutes, not documents. Maintenance in a near-airless world isn't just replace a filter. It's planned access, sealing integrity, minimizing downtime, testing redundancies. Every detail is an engineering discipline, their interaction even more so. And the economics? A kilometer of Hyperloop doesn't compete with ideals, but with alternatives. High-speed rail, planes, highway capacity, better signaling, digitization of existing networks. Capital is finite. If a state or fund invests $1 billion, it asks, where do we buy the most mobility per dollar? Where is social return highest? The sober answer has rarely favored a vacuum tube, especially since its non-tech costs. Land, lawsuits, environmental reviews, construction time hit harder than the slides suggest. Musk himself now fights other battles. Autonomous driving consumes time and regulatory breath. Starship shifts the scale of bold. Starlink makes satellites a mass product. Artificial intelligence defines the next platform. Hyperloop, a leftover in the mind of a man who can afford to seed ideas and let others harvest them, or not. His legacy here? He threw a stone into the water. The ripples must be made into waves by others. Still, it would be too easy to dismiss the idea, because even today, only short test sections exist. A few hundred meters, occasionally over a kilometer, often at moderate speeds, but it isn't dead. It's in research mode. Labs work on switches, seals, sensor fusion for capsules, fatigue of materials under cyclic pressure, energy-efficient vacuum systems. Slow, quiet work. Exactly the work visions dislike, but systems need. The difference between a presentation and a timetable is years of craftsmanship. The sober interim verdict, without a clear standard, without state co-funding, and without the decision to build a multi-kilometer certified test corridor with full safety, rescue, and operational regime, Hyperloop remains a dazzling pilot phase. And even if that hurts, it's not failure, it's diagnosis. Sometimes a decade shows that an idea isn't too early, but that the world isn't ready. Not because it's too dumb, but because it's already burning in 1,000 other places. And now? Now we ask the same questions as at the start, only wiser. Can we defeat air? Yes, in labs and in segments. Can we defeat friction? Yes. For seconds, minutes, maybe hours. Can we reinvent travel? Maybe. But only if we're willing not just to love ideas, but also the standards, maintenance windows, evacuation drills, and budget debates. The day a capsule carries passengers under vacuum won't belong to a brilliant sketch, but to a thick, boring binder. Approval granted. Until then, Hyperloop remains what it always was at its core, a great question to ourselves. How big do we think? And how diligently do we build? Do you believe the world wants and needs this tube? Or was the 2013 white paper the greatest wake-up call in recent transport history, deliberately missing the blueprint? Maybe the decision won't be made in mechanics, but in the courage to codify. On my channel, you'll experience tomorrow's tech visions today. So don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any legendary stories,